I want to talk about two emotion regulation strategies. There are actually a lot of emotion regulation strategies, but two in particular are very, very powerful. And one of those is what's called situation selection. Situation selection. And essentially what it boils down to is having awareness of what are the set of stimuli. By stimuli, I mean people, activities, outcomes, events, experiences. What are the set of stimuli that reliably, consistently, routinely bring your mood down, okay, and avoiding them. It's as simple as that. Okay, situation selection is the strategy of identifying the things that bring you down and avoiding them. And even though it's very, very simple, many of us don't do it. Okay, I have a person that I'm working with for my Coursera course on employee happiness, and he has this saying, his definition of what's brilliant is that it's common sense, but not commonplace. Common sense, but not commonplace, meaning that it's really a commonsensical idea, very, very simple idea, obvious idea, but nobody does it. Okay, nobody does it. So what this requires, situation selection, and I'm going to actually spend some time with you guys on this exercise in the next 5 minutes, calls for listing the set of things. Again, this is people, experiences, outcomes. For example, one of the things that definitely brings me down is not to have enough sleep. Okay, if I have less than 6 hours of sleep, it actually has a big impact on my mood. I know it. If I have more than 8 hours of sleep, I really feel like a king. I feel like peaceful. I feel like I can do anything. Okay, so I know this over time with my experience. And so it is up to me now to avoid the situation of having less than 6 hours of sleep. Okay, and I try and manage that as best as I can. Maybe you have a certain boss that brings you down, or maybe a coworker. Right? When I started out at the University of Texas at Austin, there was a big drinking culture. Don't get me wrong, I like to drink, okay? I like to have fun. In fact, we had a lot of fun just this Saturday, okay? But not every day, of course. Next day, if I have to work, if I have to teach, it's not a very good idea to drink a lot. What used to happen, though, is that on the way to the garage, there was a little bar on the side, and these colleagues would hang out there. And if they saw anybody from the department, they say, come on, let's just have one drink, okay? And one drink leads to 2 drinks, and 3 drinks, and 4 drinks. And the next day, I would have a bit of a headache, sometimes even a hangover, and that's not very good for my work and my happiness. So I had to find a way to avoid this situation selection again. And so I started parking in a different place so that I can, it was a longer walk for me, but I think it was really useful for me. Really, I mean, this is a very simple idea, to list the things that bring you down and avoid them. And you can think about the mirror image of this, which is to list the set of things that bring you up and consistently do that. That's another exercise I have in my book. And if you buy the book, then you can read the exercise. But here I want to focus on this, what I call avoiding the Debbie Downers. I'm going to get to that in a minute. But let me talk about the second strategy, which is something called cognitive reappraisal. Cognitive reappraisal. Essentially, the strategy has to do with reappraising or reinterpreting an experience or an event that you think is negative. So for example, if the boss gives you a bad evaluation, if you feel that the boss has been unfair to you, has treated you unfairly, you're going to feel angry, you're going to feel a bit of rage perhaps even. But if you reinterpret that event and look at all the other occasions in which the boss has really been supportive of you, then maybe this piece of negative evaluation you're going to reinterpret as, this is something that could be useful for me to improve. Then you could even perhaps turn that anger into gratitude. More generally, I think I speak for all of us here. The set of problems that we think are so important, that bring us down, that make us anxious, are really first world problems. They are not third world problems, right? Back in India, where I'm from, and some of you have visited India, you know that there's far greater levels of poverty, relentless poverty. But still, a lot of people are quite happy there. In Bulgaria, which is a country that is far more advanced, far higher levels of GDP per capita, much higher levels of wealth compared to India, for sure. But I don't think that I see as many smiling faces here. You are lucky people. You don't realize it. Why? I think there's a very rational, justifiable reason for it, very logical reason for it. you're surrounded by rich countries. You belong to the EU, which might actually be a bit of a curse, because perhaps you think that we are the lowest among all the EU countries, and that is your reference point. That is your point of comparison. It's like being a poor person in a rich neighborhood. And lots of studies show that that actually makes you less happy than to have even less money but live in an even poorer neighborhood. It's called the Easterlin paradox. It's called the Easterlin paradox, where they show that countries that increase in GDP don't increase in happiness, because the comparison point is other people living around them rather than their own material wealth. If you think about our lives, we have much more comfortable lives, even luxurious life, compared to the kings of the past. I visited the Tower of London, and Henry VIII, right, didn't used to have enough hot water sometimes to take a nice bath even. So they used to be smelly going around, and only had certain kinds of foods at certain times because of seasonality and so on. We live like kings right now, but we're not quite as happy as we could be, or should be, I would say. Okay? So cognitive reappraisal is about that, is about reinterpreting your problems in such a way that makes you feel, you know what, in the end, things are not so bad. If I can't be happy now with this, then really I can never be happy. What am I waiting for, right? As Ronald Reagan once said, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? Okay, he was talking about something else, but I'm using that for happiness here, okay? So that's the idea of cognitive reappraisal. And what's been found in the literature on gaining this thing called internal control, right, that I talked about, which is gaining this sense of internal equanimity, peace, tranquility, etc. There is a set of strategies called emotion regulation strategies, and the two that I talked about here fall under that category of situation selection and cognitive reappraisal. In fact, there are two more that I can talk about, but in the interest of time I won't. But there's another entirely different set of strategies that's the opposite in a way of emotion regulation. In emotion regulation, you're trying to avoid things that make you feel down and try to go towards things that make you feel good. That's the basic idea. And children do it, you know, everybody tries to do it to the extent that they can. But you can do a better or worse job at it. And I'm trying to get you to do a better job at it. But there's another strategy, which is mindfulness, which is meditation, which is to embrace everything and accept it fully. In fact, radically accept it, without trying to change anything about it. And situations where you can't do anything but accept it, you can't avoid it, it's best to be mindful.